and that signals another episode of the BlueWhite Tailgate podcast. Frank Bonaning, the York Daily Record, Mike Gross of the Gross Rational Product, and Andrew Clissa here for another week. Penn State 2-0 on the season. Gentlemen, not a dominating 2-0, so we're going to start with this as our jumping off point. I'm wearing an Alcatraz t-shirt because I feel Penn State fans are in a prison of their emotions right now. They don't know which way to go with the team with the high expectations. So 2 weeks in, after FIU, tell me what went right for the Lions, and you can't say they didn't lose.
I thought their defensive line played really well in both games. I thought, and trying to identify some people in those spots other than Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant, and obviously the Chaz Coleman experience is at the top of that list, but I thought a lot of guys played pretty well in that role. So that would be the one thing and also special teams. But I thought, and although James said this both weeks, it's not although he said it, it's kind of true. There were not a lot of penalties. There were not a lot of disorganized 12 men on the field, delay a game, all that kind of stuff. So they played pretty clean. From that standpoint, I think those are the two things that I would say were positives.
Yeah, I think you go with, hey, a new defensive coordinator, and they're replacing a lot of parts, so you don't expect it to look perfect in the beginning. But having said that, I think their defense is right where I would think it should be right now. I mean, so I think no worries, no concerns on defense, considering especially a lot of replacement parts on the line that they've been going with. I think things are fine there. Offensively, hey, it's 2 games, new receivers. I think they have at least showed people promise for sure. And it's only 2 games. How about we just go there? No, special teams. I'm sorry. Big Gabe Nwosu, fellow cellist, has done a tremendous job. Like Dom DeLuca's block, because that's who Big Dom is. And I think they're going to get more. I guess the thing I like, it just seems like what you're getting now from a lot of this that we're talking about is not what you're going to get. Like, you're going to get more. And I think they've showed the ability, to me at least, like, hey, there's more positive to come. We just got to be a little patient.
Did I capture the essence of the social media world and the Penn State fan base? Frank, you had a chuckle with that hyperbolic introduction right there from me.
Because they come at it differently. Like, we're sitting here every day reading, writing, so-called analyzing what people are saying, right? We're coming at it from a different perspective. And we look at it like, oh gosh, we got like 13, 14 games to go. And where is this headed? Fans are like, to me, they're like in the moment. That means like whatever they see in the moment is what they're thinking the team is going to be and is. And I think, I think if you do it, if you're going that way as a fan, you expect really dominating that stuff that looks good from game 1 because of where they ended last year. So, I don't think there's any way you're going to be happy at what you're seeing. And I don't know. I look back on 30 years, and I think sometimes the Penn State teams that look really, really good from day one, they don't always have a lot of places. They don't always go where you think they're going, right? It's almost like they're not going to, like, where do they have, like, to gain? They don't always go where they're supposed to go. So I think this is fans got to chill out and unlock the prison key here a little bit, right? It's going to be all right.
Yeah, it'd be beautiful, Frank. Yeah. I find that the fans that I interact with, the fans that I think are my readers and I've interacted with for a long time, I think they're barely paying attention when they're playing Florida International. I think the schedule, bitching about the schedule is almost more of an issue than what's going on with the team. They're tuned out. Now, of course, if you go to social media, you get what Frank just described. I mean, we're all seeing that on Twitter and wherever else you go and people are freaking out. And it's easy to say, and many people have said, well, these games will be forgotten about in December. Well, okay, but it's one of 12 data points that everybody gets. This is what I wrote about on Saturday, I don't think it's completely insane to look at this and think this is a national championship team. I don't see it right now.
No, but I think what I like is that, okay, so, and we've done it. I've written about how, hey, their offensive line, what's kind of going on, right? Their run game is what it is, not as what we think it should be against these teams. But I also look at it like I know who the linemen are. I know that they're mostly all proven. I know that the same line
That's true.
ended last year on a hot streak and we're really rolling. And there's no injuries that at least I know of that are going to hamper this. So there's reasons for me to think, okay, they're going to work this out on the offensive line. Like maybe we don't think it should have more patience, but I think we have to have it. And I think that's okay. And James Franklin talked about that on Monday, like what's going on and what's going forward and maybe why we are seeing what we are now, but it's not going to be what we're seeing maybe in 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Frank with a perfect segue into James Franklin on the offensive line and why fans should be pretty optimistic.
Very rarely do we practice live. And even when we don't practice live, we go thud. We don't want guys on the ground. So you don't want your offensive line finishing guys. And if you're not careful, they haven't done that, but maybe 2 or 3 times during training camp. And then you get to the game and that's what you want, right? But you haven't been practicing it that way. So I thought that showed up a little bit in week 1. Week 2, I thought we were much more physical. There's some things that I think we still got to get cleaned up.
Where do they actually go and how do they get the things they need corrected going forward? Because not only is the offensive line struggling, but Drew Allar was also very sloppy, as we get into more on him a little bit later.
Well, I think I think the dealing with stunts is something that I think they will get better with as they play together as a unit, and it's pretty unusual to be playing 7 offensive linemen. I mean, you don't get as much running guys in and out of the game on the offensive line as you do on the defensive line, ideally. So there's got to be some chemistry and communication and knowing what the guy next to you is doing issues that I think they are going to work out. It's like Frank said. I mean, these guys, we know who these guys are. We've seen them do it, and we've seen Franklin's teams get better over time. One thing about the difference between the first game and the second game is, to me, it looked like Florida International played a pretty vanilla 4-3 almost all the time. Now, they did do a lot of looping and that kind of stuff. It seemed to do a lot of that, but it wasn't like you can say, well, they threw a front at us that we didn't really recognize very well. But again, James saw improvement from week 1 to 2, and certainly in terms of being more physical. Now, as far as that thing where you never worked on it in practice, well, that's the same for everybody, and so I don't know how seriously I take that, but again, like Frank said, we know who these guys are.
Yeah, I think I take what he said only more with this team because the expectations are that from week 1, they're supposed to come out and crush people up front. And I think you don't always have that expectation, and maybe almost never at Penn State in the last 10 years because you don't see it. But this year you do, and I think they're graded a little bit higher. And I think it's a combination of factors because he also talked about the running game and Nick Singleton in particular responds to a question. And the running backs have to help the line as well. And, I think these 2 running backs are really, really good, but they are who they are at this point. And I think James made it again, like Nick is thinking too much, right? And he had a talk with him, like, just go out and play loose and just do what you're really good at because he's really explosive. But if he's thinking about every single thing, right, he's not going to be explosive at all. And I think we haven't seen anything about explosive Nick Singleton yet. So,
yeah.
but we have in the past. So I think there's more to come on all that gets put together the way that people want to see. It's just putting a puzzle together, I guess, a little more than people are thinking.
Yeah, I think that's right. There was a play on Saturday where it was kind of a sweep with Nick had the ball, and there was kind of a tangle of bodies, and he could have cut it straight up the field and looked like it would have been a big play. I thought with his speed, he even could have run around the tangle of bodies and potentially turned the corner and made a big play. And he just ran right into the tangle of bodies and turned it into a nothing play. I think there has been some of that with the running backs not quite making the most of what blocking has been there at times. He is not an instinctive tackle breaker guy. He is not an instinctive I'm gonna slow down here and speed up. I'm gonna spin move. I'm gonna cut this way and set up another cut. He's not that guy. And when James has talked about coaching him up in the last 6 months or so, I think that's what he's talking about, trying to teach that. And if you're running around out there and you're thinking that because it's not instinctive the way it was for, outlandish example, Saquon, but also to an extent with Katron, you could see how that would be a thing that you might struggle with a little bit, and also a thing that you could ultimately get over in time.
Right. I mean, we know that he has a new running backs coach, and that new running backs coach is trying to raise the level of him and Katron Allen's games and work on things that maybe they haven't focused on before. Well, yeah, so that goes right into, and Nick isn't a cutback guy. He's not like stick the foot in the ground, do this move, and then do that. He's not that guy. He's never been that guy at Penn State. I don't see him becoming suddenly that guy in the next 2 weeks.
But so I think if he's going to be a first round pick, he's got to be a little bit that guy.
I think he might, and that's why he may not be. Right. Because he is not Saquon. He is, and I know that's a bad, in some ways, a really rough example, but he's
a little harsh. But
he's a very powerful guy who, now you mentioned Auburn. Now, freshman year, he did run around the edge, but he's much better, honestly, I think, running through the middle of the line and making his big gains through off the tackles and showing power, and I don't know. I think it's having Katron there is a big help. And I think Katron, to me, looks possibly visibly faster. He cut around the edge last week, I think, to me, faster than I've ever seen him hit the side of a field. And I think we've heard about him working on his speed and finally being healthy in the offseason. And so, I think the combination of them will be ultimately really, really good. But I don't know if we can expect Nick to be things that he's not.
Moving on to Drew Allar, because obviously the quarterback gets a lot of the attention. Drew did not look good. Drew admitted he didn't look good after the game. He had visibly frustrated on that one swing pass out to Singleton, and yet at the same time throws a great back shoulder ball to Devontae Ross down the field in one-on-one coverage. Great sign right there. Chuck it deep. Penn State did. It comes down. I love that reference got brought up in the press conference as well. Legendary moment. But it is James Franklin on Monday talking about Drew Allar and the growth that he needs to have about not playing well and moving on.
It's a really important trait and skill for guys to learn, is next play. Next play. No matter what happens the previous play, positive or negative, you must move on. You must move on to the next one. Each play is kind of its own entity, and you gotta make sure you're maximizing it. The only way to maximize it is to be present. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the future. You must be present. So that I did see.
So the question is for me, if Drew Allar is visibly showing frustration on the field against FIU, is that a concern for Penn State going forward and fans that Drew Allar is showing that frustration against an inferior opponent with the big dogs still out there that Penn State has to get through?
Well, I think there's just a question. There's just still the question on how Drew will be in bigger games. And I don't think him struggling a bit against FIU or him just rolling FIU is going to be the answer to our question, because we're just not sure. I don't think we were sure before the game. I don't think, to me, I'm any more or less sure after this game, because we've seen him play really well in stretches. And we also saw him struggle to some degree toward the very end of last season. And we know where he has to improve, but 2 weeks to me is is like the barometer. I mean, I guess I worry if I'm a fan because he hasn't proved it, but I'm just not sure how much he could prove to me against FIU.
It doesn't bother me that he shows frustration when he just did something that is frustrating. I mean, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I have often thought, I've seen over the years, I feel like I've seen many athletes who were too cerebral, who I thought, this is my amateur psychiatrist diagnosis, I thought they were thinking too much. If you've ever tried to play golf seriously, Andrew, getting out of your own way is an endless epic struggle in that sport. I think that I've often thought about Drew that he seems like one of those guys that struggles to get out of his own head a little bit. And if you think of some of his best moments, to me, his best moments at Penn State were when the defense was kind of forcing him to get out of his own head. Think of those fourth down throws at USC last year. Think of the throw in the Oregon game where the guy's hanging on him and trying to spin him around. Those are examples where the moment is pulling you out of your own head, the way I see it. So I think this is a thing. I think this was some of the greatest athletes I've ever seen, I thought, had this issue to some extent, and were able to overcome it. I don't think it's a hopeless problem. And like Frank said, it's going to be a different animal when it really counts.
When, as the kids used to call it back in my day, just ball, when Drew just balls and he doesn't have time to read everything, that play against Oregon really sticks out, is when he's at his best. And, I think the fan base puts way too much into one throw. I don't get all worked up, but I love going to social media to see everybody worked up over a swing pass to a running back. So that's kind of entertaining to me in its own right. But we've talked enough about what Penn State hasn't done right, where they need to go. Let's get to the Lions Roar segment. Who do you guys hand out as player of the game earns a Lions Roar here on the Blue White Tailgate podcast?
Well, I'm going to go with, I think a lot of these sort of second-tier defensive linemen have been really good, and they were really guys that we didn't know what they were. So I'm going to go with Xavier Gilliam. I think he's been very, very active, and just kind of exemplifies the one thing that we felt like was a question mark, where the answer for 2 weeks has been pretty positive.
I'm going to go two guys. One, Luke Reynolds, who led the team in receiving, stepped up. I think a lot of people expect him to become the big playmaker in place of Tyler Warren there, and I think he showed a lot of promise. He looked beyond his experience on Saturday with those 7 catches. And then Chaz Coleman, I mean, he's the talk of the defense. I mean, that play, you have to watch his strip sack. I don't care if it came in the last 3 minutes of the game. His athleticism, and this is a guy that's played defensive end part-time for like 2 years, maybe at most. He comes in, doesn't just get the sack, but I mean, how quickly he finds the ball, picks it up, and excels. I mean, he is moving all of that within like 2 seconds. And that kind of instincts are like, to me, it's like he's going to be a star. I mean, I can't believe the guy. He looks like he weighs 204 pounds, but yet he's 250, I guess, right? Or almost.
James said 250.
A little more time.
250, and he looks skinny.
This time next year, watch out. If he stays healthy, he's the next great Penn State defensive end.
I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, and I know this comparison is kind of way out there because the level of competition is so different. Frank, tell me when you saw that play, since you were on the beat at this time, that you didn't think you were in West Lafayette, Indiana, and that was LeVar Arrington attacking Drew Brees.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got LeVar and Courtney Brown all rolled up in there because I think Chaz is going to grow into something maybe that closer resembles Courtney Brown potentially than even maybe LeVar. But that game in 1999, both of those players made unbelievably athletic plays to score touchdowns. And yeah, you don't see young kids. I remember when Courtney was a freshman, it might have been 96. At USC, he started to make plays like that at Chaz's time. And you could see it then. And we saw what he grew into even quicker than I think LeVar, yeah. So you don't see that a whole lot from a kid that young. I mean, that's dynamite.
That was an instant flashback for me. My Lions Roar player of the game, I'm going with Devontae Ross. I just thought from punt returns to the catch that he made and just looks crisp and did it in multiple different ways in the passing game, out routes, going across the middle. The way he played, that gets my Lions Roar. Now, my under the radar guy who's not showing up on the stat sheet, Zuriah Fisher, and I know I picked him as my breakout guy. I had to look at the list because I have a list of 6 guys right here. I was just really impressed with Zuriah Fisher's get off. I know everybody was talking about DDS and the timing, and the broadcasters, as I rewatched the game, they're talking about Denai Dennis Sutton. But Zuriah Fisher, I thought first game back, his motor, James had him playing a little too much, I think, for James's liking. But I thought he showed a lot of stuff with his speed and explosiveness in his first game back.
Yeah. I think it'll be really interesting to see these linemen. And I include Denai Dennis Sutton when they play Oregon, because maybe more than anything, when you're playing teams like Penn State is, Nevada, FIU, Villanova, some of the biggest discrepancies are on their offensive lines, these teams, because they don't have tackles that can compare at all to what they're going to see on the upper level of the Big Ten. So I think that is such a wide chasm at this point, and it will again be on Saturday, that I think it's a good warm-up. But, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what is particularly like Zuriah Fisher, Chaz Coleman, some of those younger linemen. Well, Zuriah's not, but what those linemen that haven't played a lot lately, what they're going to look like when they meet their first really respectable offensive tackles.
And one of the things James said yesterday is when we go from playing a ton of people to narrowing it down to a relatively few number of guys playing, Chaz Coleman's reps are likely to go up, which tells you something about how high they all are on him. Because I'm not sure that he's a 3-down player that's playing the run yet. He seems like a designated edge rusher, and he could be devastating in that role.
Yeah, he's got to be coming in on 3rd down against Oregon pretty early, right? Not 1st and 2nd down out there, but he's got to.
And then it becomes, if you're dealing with him, how are you going to deal with Dennis Sutton?
Well, you're going to have to deal with Dennis Sutton, right? Because everybody knows you got to double team him because he will kill you if you don't. And you're going to have to they're going to have to take chances with a young kid, right? Yeah. Because they can't double team everybody.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have to take chances. And we're going to really see, how quickly Penn State's pass rush can make a difference, because they didn't really do it when they played Oregon the way they, I think, could have, should have the last time.
That's true.
They even missed on, Denai Dennis Sutton has missed just barely on, I think, hospitalizing a couple of the first 2 quarterbacks. But he didn't, his numbers could have been even better. How quickly can they get to Oregon's new quarterback? That could really mean the difference in this game coming up early in the game, particularly with that young kid in a whiteout in Beaver Stadium. But yes, we're getting like 3 weeks ahead of ourselves. Sorry.
I love throwing out open-ended questions that are out of left field, trying to stump you guys, and you guys come back with these steady heartbeat, rational answers. I love it. It's one of my favorite things doing this show. This is why I love doing this show. So the other reason I love doing the show is I get to talk to a lot of people. Pleased to be joined on the Blue White Tailgate podcast right now by Penn State broadcaster extraordinaire, Mr. Joseph Putnam. Putnam, what is going on? Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Andrew. Always like to talk to you. And, of course, pleasure to be on the Blue White Tailgate. Been listening into the shows here and always a great listen. So glad I'm able to be on it here this week.
Just giving a quick resume rundown before we get to questions. You're the voice of the Lady Lions. You've done color for the Lady Lions in the past. You're the voice of the State College Spikes. You're to do everything with the State College Spikes. You've been a sideline reporter for Penn State Radio with Steve Jones and Jack Ham. Every single sport you pretty much called at Penn State in some capacity. And now, the last couple seasons, you're one of the voices on the PA at Beaver Stadium. I'm going to give you a hard one. You got to tell me which one is your favorite. Upset a boss right now. Upset one of your bosses.
It's like your kids. You love them all equally, and but I think yes, they're all great. I mean, they're all different seasons. I mean, basketball season flows into baseball season, which flows into football season, which flows into basketball season. But even some of the other sports I've had the privilege to be able to do. Hockey, field hockey, lacrosse, soccer, wrestling, all of them have sort of their pluses. I do think that for me, baseball on the radio is to me my favorite. The Lady Lions, of course, it's tremendous to call them. And I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people this year under Carolyn Keeger. But at the same time, baseball on the radio, it just has that, you get the chance with the rhythms of the game, even with pitch timers in place now and inning clocks, you still get the chance to tell stories and really explore the space, so to speak, on radio side. But for PA, I mean, if you say, welcome to Beaver Stadium, and 110,000 people erupt in response, that's something that you can't really find anywhere else. So I think that out of all of them, I know those are the moments that stick with me, I think, through the years. But again, I enjoy all of them. I think that all of them bring their own unique experiences to it.
So, hey, Joe, from your position, Beaver Stadium, can you give us a specific moment because of your job that just resonates with you from announcing there? Is there just something that kind of comes to you?
I think the first game that I was able to do, Virginia, Saturday night, whiteout conditions, and so much excitement. And that was one that it was a unique situation because, of course, Rodney Martin and I'm privileged to be able to work with Rodney. We are a great team, and we're very much look forward to bringing the PA Express to Beaver Stadium each and every week. Unfortunately, that first week, that West Virginia game in 2023, Rodney was rendered unavailable for that game. And so I ended up having to do sort of both positions that we have, take it all. But just that excitement to be in that position, the first time, Saturday night game, nationally televised on NBC, I think with all of that, that's what sticks with me. Now, of course, you have so many big games coming up. I think this year, the whiteout against Oregon, already looking ahead, I think that's going to be a very exciting time for a lot of people. So we'll see if it supplants it. But definitely, you really, it takes a lot to beat the first time in there. So that's the one that sticks with me.
Joe, having heard your voice, of course, obviously at the stadium, and hearing it now,
yeah.
It's you sound like a broadcaster, but it's also a pretty distinctive and recognizably your voice. So I wonder if you're ever like at Sheetz or Starbucks or something like that in State College, and people say, "Who's that guy? I recognize that guy." Does that ever happen?
I get a lot of, oh, you must be on the radio. You have a great voice. I think that the people sort of pinpointing, oh, you're the guy at Beaver Stadium. It's not unless and until they know who I am, or with the spikes, and oh, you're the guy that does that too. And so, but yes, I do get. Man, you have a great voice. Do you do radio?
Yeah, right. Well, that's a compliment. Sure.
Yeah.
Joe, I got to admonish you. You already mentioned Oregon, 1-0. That's 2 weeks away.
Yes, that's true. Villanova's coming up. You cannot look past it. We got to be 1-0 this week. But in terms of being the greatest show in college sports, as we like to call ourselves, I think Villanova, as much as we want to defeat them, become 1-0 this week. That Villanova at 3:30 and Oregon under the lights at Beaver Stadium with a whiteout. I think we know those are two separate, distinct things, and we're definitely. I mean, we'll be bringing our A game this weekend for sure, but we'll be definitely sure to ramp everything up to 11 coming up on the 27th.
Joe, I understand you know a little bit about Penn State football history. That is correct. Is that
I know a little bit about a little bit, as they say.
All right. So I'm in the dentist office last week, and somehow they're talking to me about Penn State's original colors.
Oh, yes.
I was a little bit stumped on where that goes back to. So is that like a type of history thing, like right off the bat?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, the original school colors for Penn State's athletic teams were pink and black.
Okay.
And over time, you had to wash the uniforms, and the pink faded away to a white. Well, the black kind of stayed, but at some point, and I'm not quite sure when the decision was made, but they at some point then they decided to turn from black to blue and become blue and white. But pink and black are the original athletic colors, and I always love seeing the pink and black out there because, of course, my favorite professional wrestler of all time is Bret the Hitman Hart, who famously wore pink and black as well.
Wow.
Does Adidas come up with an alternate somehow?
I mean, I think the possibilities are out there for sure. I think that the decision has been made, a deal's been announced, but I think there's a lot of things that Penn State and Adidas are going to come together on here over the next several years, over the course of that contract, and we'll see what happens. I do think that for all 31 teams, I think it's going to be the opportunity to do some interesting things will be out there for sure.
Joe's getting tougher questions thrown at him right now than Joe Moorhead, Trace McSorley, Grant Haley. We're throwing the corporate questions at Putnam here. Trying to get him in trouble. So,
trying.
You grew up in Bellefonte.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell everybody where you went to school. You and I went to the same college, but
yes,
you grew up in Bellefonte. What is the one moment in Penn State football, with all your historical knowledge and from hanging around with Jack Ham and talking to Steve Jones and just being at practice, standing with those guys, what's the one, because you're a voice, what's the one voice that stands out to you of all the great moments in Penn State sports history, Penn State football history?
I think that I've been privileged enough on the State College Spike side to work side by side with Steve Jones now for 17 years. He is a great friend of mine, and I think he is somebody that when you look at what goes into broadcasting, I think we all aspire to be. I think that he is, to a lot of folks, he is the classic voice of Penn State athletics, football, basketball, deservedly so. But I think also, too, like for a lot of us growing up in this area, the first voice you heard was Fran Fisher's. And I don't think that even Steve would say that Fran does not also deserve all the accolades and everything, that I think that the distinction of being the voice of Penn State, it's such an important one. The history, the tradition is so wide and varied. There's so many of those indelible moments. And I think for me, I grew up with Fran Fisher and George Paterno on the radio, listening in, because, of course, at that time, not every game was on TV. That's how long ago it was that I was growing up. But at the same time, I think that for a lot of people, it's going to be Steve Jones and Jack Ham is going to be that classic combination. And I think that for all of us, we've been fortunate to have two outstanding, really titanic voices in Fran Fisher and Steve Jones over the past several decades. And I think I'd be remiss, of course, if I didn't throw in Gil Santos, who was voice of Penn State for the 1986 national championship as well. I know Steve had the chance to work with him while he was here at Penn State as well. But and you even look back the early days of the syndicated television of Penn State being out there. Ray Scott was one of the voices. I mean, he's the guy behind the classic Lombardi Packers. He was a voice of Penn State football as well. We've been privileged, I think, to be blessed with many, many great voices documenting and detailing the accomplishments of Penn State football and Penn State athletics over the years. So
what's your one call?
My one call, golly.
Even if it's not a Penn State voice, if it's Keith Jackson with Blackledge, Keith Jackson at the Rose Bowl with Kajana Carter, what's the one call that sticks out? Is it interception, Gustavo? Like, what is it? As a local kid that's now in so many broadcast booths at Penn State.
It's tough for me to pick one indelible Penn State call. I do think you mentioned Kajana Carter, first play of the Rose Bowl. I think Keith Jackson captured that beautifully. I think Fran Fisher with the call on the first national title in 1982, or actually New Year's Day 1983 down in New Orleans. I think that deserves to be up there. That's the great thing about Penn State sports. There's so many fantastic moments. It's hard to pick.
Just settle down.
Absolutely.
Settle down.
I wrote, yeah. I can't pick one. But those are the two I think that to me would be favorites over the years for Penn State sports.
Joe, what's your favorite line to do at Beaver Stadium in a game coming up? You got Villanova coming up. Give us a line. Give the fans a line here.
Oh my God. Well, the biggest one for me is always hopping on, just about 40 minutes before the game and just saying, "Welcome to Beaver Stadium." That to me, because that everybody gets wired. Like they know, like, okay, game time is coming, and they respond in kind. That to me is my favorite to do, just because of that response. And I actually, what also is exciting is 1 hour till Penn State football. That's an exciting line to me. I tend to put a lot of juice into that one. And again, it's because of the response of the fans and what they're able to respond back with. That's what I love the best about it. When I'm able to do something and play an active role in galvanizing 107, 108, 109, 110,000 people into response. That to me is my favorite.
I'm good. I think we put Joe on the spot enough here.
Not yet. I need a Steve Jones impression, whether it's Battle for Three, because that's a famous line from Steve Jones. Give me a Steve Jones impression.
Listen, Andrew, you've been trying to get me to do impression. I don't know.
I think I sucked up.
No. Here's the one that comes to mind for me is just because you hear it after every touchdown. Touchdown, Penn State!
It's a good one.
He just kind of barked that, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's you hear it after most, if not all, of Penn State's touchdowns at Beaver Stadium. That's the one that sticks with me. If you want me to do now, I mean, we could probably. I'm not very good at impressions to start with, but I think that with Steve, he really, you can do an impression of him, but I don't think you can capture the essence of him.
Yeah,
Not true. We all love Steve. Steve, and all the broadcasters at Penn State are great friends. So our favorite line, being up in the press box when you sat in the press box with us, is this is a working press box. No cheering is allowed. Unfortunately, not everybody up there the first 2 weeks of the season following that rule. We need to bring Joe Putnam back just for that announcement to make sure everybody's following the rule.
You need me to come in and crack the whip again?
Lay the law. Lay it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Putnam, one of the many extraordinary voices of Penn State athletics. You can hear him all season long at Beaver Stadium on the PA, and later on this year throughout all Penn State athletic events as he fills in, but specifically Lady Lions, the voice of the Lady Lions basketball team. Putnam, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Joe.
I want to thank Joe Putnam for joining the Blue White Tailgate podcast. Remember, email the show, bluewhitetailgatepodcast@gmail.com. Most important thing is, as Penn State heads into Villanova, Penn State is 2-0 as they take that 1-0 mentality every single week. Mike, you asked James Franklin on Monday about being critical of film and also getting that result and still being able to be happy that you won a game where you didn't play well. Here's James Franklin on winning.
Mike, I think there's areas that we know we have to get better, and that's in some rooms articulated more clearly than others. Terry Smith has got a reputation of being the ultimate truth teller in the building to everybody, including myself. So that's happening in all the different meetings. All the coaches have different approaches to how they do that. So that's valuable and that's important. So I think our guys feel like we've done enough to win, but we haven't played up to what our expectations and standards are, as I think we all, need to do from a perspective standpoint, is sometimes we're too close to it, right? So I look at a ton of teams across the country that were in dogfights last week.
He makes a good point that a lot of people are right on top of everything and don't see, the horses on the inside rail and coming around the edge. And you just look at last week. LSU struggled, and these aren't excuses. These are just facts. LSU struggled against Louisiana Tech. Georgia struggled against Austin Peay. Struggled, at least on the scoreboard, 28-6. Clemson, they were down to Troy and had to score the last 17 points of that game to win. They won 27-16. Iowa lost to Iowa State. Michigan went down, although that's, a whole other underanimal. It was on the road, Bryce Underwood. That's a whole discussion for the bye week. But Arizona State went down at Mississippi State, and Baylor beat SMU in the Book of Genesis showdown. But Florida, they lost to USF. USF is a good team, and I get what James is saying, but the LSU and the UGA things stick out that they struggled against their opponents as well.
Yeah, Georgia, I think, has been very similar to Penn, just by going by the box scores, and the little bit of highlights. I think they've been very similar to Penn State so far. They're not what they're going to be, and they're being too close to it. That is absolutely a thing, no question. I'll tell you what was kind of interesting to me, and one thing that kind of prompted this question. There was some video that Penn State put out on social media of Franklin talking to the team after the game, and he very much played we're 1-0 this week. It's not easy to win no matter what. He very much played that card, which we've heard him do many, many times. But talking to us, he really didn't do that. He sort of, when people asked him questions about, are you worried about this? He kind of was pretty honest with us. So I thought that was, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then within his answer, and you played it in the video there, I thought this was interesting. Some rooms articulated more clearly than others when they're not playing well. I don't know what that means, but I thought it was interesting that he shared that with us. I mean, it's sort of a continuum. When it's good to win, but it's good to ignore the scoreboard and honestly look at how you're playing. So where do we fit? Where are we right now on that continuum? That was a question, and I don't think it's not like a math problem. There's no obvious subjective answer to it.
No,
Harry Smith is definitely the guy that comes in there, like talking to Terry outside and being loose with Terry. He's definitely the guy that goes in there and be like, we suck at certain things. So I think James hits that one on the head.
And I think Penn State to some degree is working on things through these first 3 weeks for later in the year. And part of it, the easiest thing is they're playing a lot of defensive players, right? But I think they're also trying to do things, maybe even in the run game. They're trying to do things to work on because, hey, you have a chance. You're going to beat these teams. You got a new defensive coordinator. You got, some new pieces on offense, all new receivers with Drew. You're working on some things too that maybe you're not the best at because you can and still win the game. Okay. So is Franklin going to outlay all the plans on what exactly? No, he's not going to do that. But I definitely get the sense that is part of it because they're always looking ahead, though they say they don't, but they always are. And they have it scripted. And I think that's part of it because they know they can. You can't work on things when you're playing most teams in the Big Ten. You got to tighten up your lineup and try to win the game. Well, this is your chance. And there's 3 weeks in a row.
And then that gets us back to scheduling because Michigan didn't have that luxury. LSU didn't have that luxury. Clemson didn't have that luxury. Notre Dame didn't have that luxury. On and on and on. So that's
and Michigan has a great young quarterback, but that great young quarterback probably isn't going to be what he is against Oklahoma in the second game of his career, right? And they lose the game.
Turned 18.
So there's things you can probably take from that, but I think there's also other things you can take from playing FIU and Villanova, whether fans like it or not, at the beginning of the season. You have to just take advantage of that circumstance, and I think it's a little harder sometimes to tell what you're gaining from it. So,
yes, do I agree that the schedule is bad? Yes. Do I agree that there's benefit to this schedule? 100%.
Yeah.
But you have to take it for what it is. And I actually like when James is more critical James than no matter what I say, guys, I'm going to be positive James from the year 14, year 15. I like critical James. I've said that multiple times. So the more that he's critical of players is the better that I like the words coming out of James Franklin's mouth and optimism going forward. What I dislike most about the weekend, the 2-point conversion play. I thought, why is that on tape? That was a great play. I was like, why is this on film for possibly a bigger game? That was the one thing I took away that I disliked the most. And I'm sure people are freaking out, like, couldn't run the ball, couldn't throw the ball. Touchdowns almost given up if it was against a better team. You got to assume a running back's going to break one when Campbell missed the tailback in the hole. I'm upset about the 2-point conversion play being on tape.
Well, James would argue we did it to get it on tape.
And it's a logical argument.
And maybe Andy Kotelnicki has 15 of them. And
that was a great play.
Exactly. And you can tell, James, critical James, he comes down on guys if you really pay attention. Like he was kind of rough on Khalil Dinkins. He mentioned it a couple of times. They had 5 drops. He mentioned Khalil by name. He expects more out of a senior. Khalil had 2 drops in the game that he can't afford to have moving forward. So those are the things, too, that I think maybe it's good to get ironed out now. But, yeah, I think it is really valuable when James comes out and you can get a sense in that instance, like he expects more out of this kid. Right. And he says
James is communicating to the team through us to a greater extent than Joe ever did. I mean, it's very, very.
Joe would do it once in a while.
Absolutely. But I think
James was one.
Yeah, right.
Calling out Brian Scott was another, but it doesn't happen a lot. Now, I think James has become more like maybe what you're saying. He's doing it maybe a little more subtly sometimes and maybe more often.
Yeah.
You're inserted.
Correct. Yeah.
Frank, who was the guy that Joe said one time he's got to decide if he wants to play football or not? And that was in a press conference. That was pretty harsh.
I don't know.
Well, he got on I'm not saying this isn't that case, but I mean he did get on Austin Scott a couple of times, at least
That's
once.
the name that popped into my head, but I didn't remember.
Joel Holler, the former big offense. I mean, there's some big offensive line
out of McCaskey High School
that did not pan out under Joe and Penn State because I think they're always our big offensive linemen don't pan out. But I
remember what I remember him saying about Joel Holler is his weight was always a problem. He was a gigantic human being. He does fine when we have him up here at the training table. When he goes home and gets his mom's cooking, that's when he gets in trouble. And Joel Holler just was that boy loved to eat. He was a good athlete and a huge person, and he's turned out fine. He's around Lancaster, and he's done well. Ended up at Delaware, but yeah, Joel had the high caloric intake, no question.
Caloric. That was not on my bingo card for words that I thought I would hear today.
Well, to throw
All right, so let's just have a little bit of fun. There are a lot of good games out there this week, and a lot of upset potential. I feel that's really going to impact college football playoff. So let's pick some games here. Let's have some fun. Oklahoma on the road against Temple. 13 at Temple. How does this get scheduled? First,
by far the most amazing thing about this is the 3 words "on the road." I'm glad you brought this game up, though, because I want to mention a local guy, Evan Simons from Manheim, who a guy I know very well, know his dad very well. He's a great kid, and he's had a long, kind of rocky college career. He is now Temple's starting quarterback, and they had a couple of blowouts against substandard opponents, but he has 9 touchdown passes already this season, and he has tremendous numbers. Now, obviously, he's stepping into a different solar system, going against Oklahoma, but I'm really happy to see him, a kid who really waited around for his shot. I'm happy to see him do well, and also I think Oklahoma's going to win that game.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just go with that. That's it. I got nothing for you.
Clemson at Georgia Tech, just real quick.
I like Georgia Tech. I think Clemson stopping the run is an issue. It was an issue all last year. I told you before what I think about Clemson. That's probably a close game, but I like Georgia Tech.
Definitely Clemson. Take Georgia Tech in the points, right?
Yeah, I'm with Frank on that one. Wisconsin and Bama. I think this one's more interesting than it was to start the year.
I take Bama. I don't think Wisconsin's very good, and Alabama is not as bad as people think.
Yeah, it's a proving point for Alabama more than anything. That's it.
Yeah.
Georgia, Tennessee.
Wow, who knows, right? I mean, Georgia's the favorite.
I mean, there's 2 or 3 you had on this list, Andrew, that are really to me are coin flips. I'm gonna. You got the
Georgia rebounds
on the road. Give me Tennessee.
I'm going to go with Georgia because they're still the big bad man on the block. And until they're beaten, I'll ride the big bad man on the block. South Florida and Miami, to me, is the most interesting game of the week.
Yep.
I'm going to go with Miami. I think South Florida, it's an awful lot of a team from that level to do it 3 weeks in a row, which they have done to their 2 weeks in a row to their enormous credit. I'll go with Miami.
Good point.
I'm going to go with Miami because if they lose this game, it sets back the program another 5 years to them actually becoming the U again.
Wow.
That's a drastic.
They want to be the U, step up and prove you're the U. You beat Notre Dame, now beat another team in state. There's going to be a lot. It's going to be chippy.
Is this the anti-vaccination bowl?
I'm not quite sure on that one, and I'm not. Texas A&M and Notre Dame. We'll pick that one. I think it's a must-win for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think they roll them. If they don't, then can they afford to struggle or start 0-2?
You go with.
But I think the only way they don't roll them is if they really have trouble, to me, at quarterback.
Yeah,
like that he's really an issue, and I don't see that happening. But
I didn't think he was terrible in the game they lost. I thought he was okay in the game they lost. Anyway.
I left out this topic. We're not going to pick Vanderbilt at South Carolina. Vandy possibly just put Brent Pry at the end of the year out at Virginia Tech. That's a topic for a later day. But
Vandy outgained them by 300 yards in the second half.
Yeah.
Okay. South Carolina's ranked number 11. Vanderbilt's completely unranked. I mean, the wire service polls this week are real. I know who cares, but they're really goofy. Anyway.
Yeah, that should be an interesting one. Could be one, and it has college football playoff implications for South Carolina. So because they're not going to run the table in the SEC, this is not one that they want to drop. I'll go with South Carolina. But I didn't bring up Bo Prabula. That's one that we could talk about next week. That'd be a fun topic. We'll let Drew Allar have a rebound game here, and then we'll talk Bo Prabula, send the masses, in the chaos. But Nike and Adidas. Penn State switching over. We had Spider Caldwell on this program talking about how Penn State basically helped Nike build their conglomerate in college football. Nike came in 1993. The jerseys weren't good. That's why the patches were always moved. Penn State was their test school where they could hide everything. Their footballs weren't good. Then they had to steal the guys from Wilson. That did great on the social medias last week when this deal was announced. Is Penn State, I'll ask you guys, Nike is the gold standard in terms of high-level athletes in the professional world. Is Penn State signing with a brand that's not as hot when it comes to athletes wanting to wear their apparel, their shoes, their equipment? And is that dangerous for Penn State?
I don't think so at all. I think Adidas is the rising force. I think Nike's kind of shown they're kind of stale, and they don't care, it seems like, about Penn State to the point where they're not going to give Penn State the kind of financial backing that, in a sense, you hate to maybe say the word deserve, but I mean, this is clearly about representation and money and finances. And I don't know. I see a lot of fans that are not necessarily happy with the kind of product, apparel that Nike's been putting out in recent years. So I think this is a win-win for Penn State.
I used to think Nike was evil. Now I just think they're sort of this benign brand like McDonald's or Walmart or Levi's, or I think they want to. Frank and I have talked about this. I think they sort of evolved into corporate middle age, and where I don't think you need to be with Nike. Maybe in a sense, 20 years ago, you kind of needed to be with Nike. So I think it's okay in that regard. And the number that we've seen thrown around here, $300 million over 10 years. I mean, that's a big number, but that doesn't seem insane to me. It's per year, on a per year basis for an athletic program the size of Penn State's that has 30 some teams. I mean, in an era when the numbers for sports and college sports just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I wonder, I kind of am with everything that Frank said. I wonder if Nike was as on board with Penn State as it once was. And maybe Pat Kraft said, okay, let's look around, and liked what he saw.
I like the move. I love it. If I buy a golf polo, I think Under Armour's golf polos are nicer when I'm on the course. I think they're heavier, more durable. So I like other products. So I think Penn State's making a good move. It is about the money. It is about the NIL opportunities. For people that are worried about this, losing this check mark for 3 stripes, it makes no difference to me. It's not related in any way to tradition. And I do think Nike was disrespecting Penn State. What was reported about not partnering with Saquon and having that's a missed opportunity. That costs Nike money. And I will say this, if this was 40 years ago and it's Joe Paterno and Phil Knight, this does not happen.
This wouldn't happen.
It would not have happened.
100%.
And it would have been Joe going to Phil Knight and saying, we need to be treated equal. We've done this for you, and it would have been worked out. And Knight's disrespect towards Penn State in this modern era, I think Pat Kraft makes a great decision. And if this vote is not unanimous for the Board of Trustees, fans have a right to be upset. They have a right to be upset.
Well, it's going to pass, or they wouldn't have put this out there last year.
But it should be unanimous. The vote should be unanimous. You guys know where I'm going with that. It should absolutely be unanimous because of that. So
I bet it's not going to be unanimous.
It should.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm just saying, I bet it's not going to be.
We're not the brand with the 3 stripes, but we could be the 3 amigos of the Penn State beat here on the Blue White Tailgate podcast. Remember, reach out, get us your thoughts. Get Frank your thoughts at his email at the York Daily Record. Mike Gross at the Gross Rational Product. They're putting out great stuff all season long. There it is. The classic Adidas. Look, put that on. I can smell it coming through the screen.
Just happen to have that on my feet right now.
For Frank, Mike, Joe Putnam, thanks for joining us here on the Blue White Tailgate podcast. I'm Andrew Klista. We'll see you next week when Penn State faces off against BYE. It's not an off week, it's a work week. Just remember that for the Nittany Lions next week, and we'll have you covered. We'll see you then.